Why are you a member of Voices of Austin?
Well, Voices of Austin is a nonpartisan, grassroots community education organization. And I found back in about 2007 that the powers that be operate in a bubble when they craft policy. That policy crafting is done in an isolated kind of area where not just elected officials are in that space, but you have special interest groups, you have development interest, you have business interest, but that represents a small minority part of the people in the city who have concerns and are affected by that policy. And there's no way for those people who are outside of that bubble, the majority of people are outside of that bubble, to really penetrate and get the policymakers, the power brokers, to listen to what it is that are issues for us. I remember back in 2007, as I said, I was in my bed watching the city council meeting, and all of a sudden they were talking about expanding the urban core east of where it currently is over to 183. And I thought, nobody asked us that live east of 183 if we wanted to even be in the urban core. We don't even know what the urban core is. And so those kinds of decisions are made on a regular basis. And I think it's not good citizenship, it's not good public policy formation when you just use people inside the bubble and the people on the edges have no opportunity to impact it.
What do you think drives those kinds of decisions? What do the people inside that bubble want? What is their interest in it?
The interest is power. It's financial issues, it's interest, it's about political interest, it's about all kinds of things that really don't take into consideration the people who live in a city who have some specific needs that are not being addressed by the people in the bubble because they're not paying attention to the majority of people outside of the bubble. Unless you have a special interest group, then you can penetrate the bubble. The environmental community did that when they pricked the bubble, and then we got the Edward Aquifer and all of that kind of stuff. But people suffer. There are unintended consequences if you don't have enough interest in the room to say, let's look outside and see what the unintended consequences will be for the people who are outside of this bubble. The other thing that you asked was defunding. I'm not sure that I understand that concept of defunding the police. I do think that there's an opportunity if people would take the time to have conversations about what people are really asking for. Are they asking for additional money to fund social services and education? Because policing is a part of a larger system of government, and you just can't work on one without working on the others. So if you're talking about trying to find additional money for those other systems, then I think we need to look at asking the state of Texas perhaps to fund more, provide more funding for people who have been formerly incarcerated, who leave the prison system and come into our community. Also people with the Department of Mental Health, Mental Retardation to provide additional funds. We need to find the source of some of the problems that we're having. There is, of course, no doubt that policing needs to be reformed in some manner. We need to look at the policies and the practices and the patterns of policing, especially as it relates to encounters, deadly encounters with minority communities. And so I think that we've somehow gotten off of those issues because we do need to look at that. My first year on the city council, I spent 14 weeks every Tuesday in the Citizens Police Academy because I needed to know from a personal point of view what their training is and what that looks like and is there bias, do they talk about that? I would say that we probably have one of the best trained police forces in the country. I don't know all of them, but I've seen the training and the manuals that they've gone through. I've experienced that training. But maybe it's retraining. Maybe we need to do some retraining about the history of systemic racism in this country and what policing looked like and feels like to those of us who have had that long history and trauma of vigilante justice. And now we've got stand your ground justice and the castle doctrine justice. And so we need, as a community, a minority community, police officers to be available. And as Austin continues to grow, and that seems to be the trajectory we're on, is continued growth, we can't do with less officers. We have to do with more officers and perhaps differently trained officers so that they can respond to some of the serious issues. I was the victim of domestic violence. Physical, emotional, sexual violence. And I had to call Austin PD several times in my relationship before they gave me enough resources to say, these are some steps that you can take to get out of this situation. So I see a value in policing. My son is in law enforcement, but I also know that there's some things that must be changed, but I don't know that we're focusing on that when we just say, let's defund the police department and send 100 million over here and 100 million over there. There's got to be some accountability measures. You've got to understand what the issues are, who's going to do these things. I would not send a professional person to a domestic abuse call. You never can tell when those calls are going to go wrong. Many officers have gotten killed just responding to domestic abuse. So there's so many nuances that we're not talking about. We're just reacting to Mr. Floyd's unfortunate death. Of course it's a problem. It's a problem in all areas, all across the city. The poll that the Voices of Austin took during the protests indicated that all of Austinites, no matter what district they were living in, what demographic they represented, they all want more policing. They don't want less officers, they want more. I live close to the University of Texas, and I haven't seen a policeman going by just to run through the neighborhood except on a call, running to and from. And so people feel unsafe. In a neighborhood I've lived in since 1954, I'm now feeling unsafe because I don't see that friendly cop go by and you can kind of wave at them as they go by Chestnut. So I think people talk about defunding. I think maybe they're really talking about reconstructing our social service delivery system, but it doesn't have to be with police dollars. It can be with any number of other dollars, but we're not taking the time to have those conversations about what other resources are out there, like the state of Texas, to be able to help facilitate the social service needs that the community has gotten. This homeless issue has just exacerbated a problem with the pandemic, the protest, children needing to go back to school. And so we're in extraordinary times, but we're not taking the time to think about what is the real things that we need to do to reform policing, and we all agree to that, and make sure that Austin has enough police to take care of their current population as well as the growing population that all of us see coming. And it's a both and situation, not an either or.